Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking the opportunity to talk about the statewide septic code. We had the opportunity last session to vote on a version of this, and it made it all the way over to the House and was working its way through the process, and unfortunately did not get done before we adjourned for the year. I want to just put a quick context on here. The first time I got involved with this was in 2018 when I was the Democratic leader. At that point in time, Representative Jim Lauer and Representative Abdullah Hammoud were having negotiations and trying to see if they could get that done in 2018. And it obviously didn't get done. And you can say that probably for every 8-year period, there was at least 2 representatives or 2 senators for close to 40 years that have tried to resolve creating a statewide septic code. Currently, right now, Michigan is the only state in the entire country that doesn't have a statewide septic code. We rely on our counties to specifically manage the implementation of their local codes, and then in some instances you have counties that will actually do inspections, but many counties don't have any type of regular type of inspection process. We currently have in Michigan 1.3 million plus septic systems in the state. At any given point in time, research has shown us that we could be in some level of failure of about 20 to 30% of those systems on any given year. And so it is a surprising statistic. And when I say failing, it doesn't mean it's a complete failure, but there are systems currently right now that local counties do not know if the system has ever been looked at because they've been grandfathered in for decades. There have been points in time where people have done inspections to houses and they found septic systems, just draining into, streams and other types of things. And so for us to be able to address this issue, we need to do that. And so I wanted to commit to bringing it up again. Because I think it is something that we should look at. I'm going to talk about some of the compromises that we made a couple years ago. Obviously, you'll hear testimony, and then when you hear the testimony, I think you'll also understand why it's been 40 years since we've been able to do nothing. The groups that we got to some level of neutrality back in December of 2023, many of them will be back up here saying, hey, we want additional changes, we want additional things, and we will maybe not be supporting these bills today and so forth. But I do think we should make a strong point of trying to get something done, because the inaction of the last 40 years could continue to be the inaction for decades to come if we don't do something in this moment of time. And so let me just walk through a few of these items, and then I know there's a lot of people here to testify. One of the key things for us has been this discussion of how can you manage 1.3 million systems to see some level of periodic inspection. You have one group of people who want to have periodic inspections, and many counties have just decided, hey, on the sale of your property, we will do an inspection and take a look at that. And that has been, I think, the question for the last 40 years is what's the right balance between some kind of inspection process every X amount of years, or do you do this at the sale of the property? And so that has been the thing that we've been trying to find some common ground. So the first set of things I want to talk about are things that I think everyone agrees on. One is that we need to create a statewide database so everybody knows where our septic systems are, what type of systems that they are, when was the last time somebody had a chance to inspect them, and currently that doesn't exist. You can talk to many of the counties. Some of them have digitized their systems, but many of them are just in paper files in a variety of different places within the county health department. So one, we have to create the statewide database. Then we also have to create statewide standards. And those standards we have discussed should be created by a technical advisory committee to EGLE. We didn't want just EGLE to go out and create a set of things. We wanted those to be informed by our local health departments and counties. We wanted it to be informed by the industry that actually does the inspections, that does the pump outs. We wanted our environmental community to all be there. And so we have created a technical advisory board, and we made some changes from a couple years ago. I think one of the concerns that people had was that this was perhaps too heavy with staffing of Eagle having seats on here, and so we've made Eagle a non-voting member of the board. We wanted to create, because we wanted to have access to all regions of the state, we wanted to have a board big enough that all regions had a representation, because there is different topography in the different parts of the state that we need to take into account, and that we wanted to ensure that it was easier for the group to meet. And so whether it could be virtually and so forth. And so we made a set of changes around those pieces there. And so then the question came up, if there isn't a compromise on how you can get all these done inspections on a regular basis, who should we focus on first? And that was, I thought, the big compromise, was look at risk-based evaluations. Instead of just looking at a system that was put in 5 years ago, let's take a look at the oldest systems that are in somebody's area. Let's take a look at those that we know for sure that were never certified or never brought up because they are 50, 60 years old. Let's take a look at those. We also wanted to say, hey, if they're closest to water, whether it's a lake or a river, we want those to be inspected first. And so we looked at this risk-based evaluation and said that should be the focus point for these first set of items that are had here. And that over time, as systems got old, they should all see some level of inspection every 10 years. And so that was sort of the process here. What some groups wanted to see at that point was sort of the removal of sail-on inspection, but because we decided not to do a periodic inspection of all homes, we said, hey, let's keep those sales on inspection that local counties already have the right to do. They can keep those programs in place that will help them meet their goals and objectives. So just wanted to say a few final things, and then, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to questions from the committee, but I think there's a lot of people here to speak on these things. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the timeline, and because the most thing that I've heard from people that they are concerned that if this was turned on immediately, that they might not have the capacity to do these inspections. So we do give them a runway space, and that is obviously part of, I think, some of the concern you will hear here, whether that's too much runway space or not. One of the things that we said is that you have to create this technical advisory committee, get them moving, that within 120 days of the effective date, that committee will meet. They'll make recommendations within 2 years. Then Eagle will promulgate those rules after within 3 years. And so this allows an opportunity for all of this to begin to sort of work on the statewide level. It doesn't stop anything that's already happening. It doesn't stop anybody from starting earlier, but it allows the concern that we heard from local health departments to give them some more time. And that a point in time that every local health department would then have to create a plan that is presented to the state on how they will do all their inspections using the risk-based model as number one. And then over time, because all systems will get old, over time all systems will get checked. Then we also ask for some additional reporting to happen back to our from Eagle back to our committee. One of the things we did create and give access points was concerns from our local health departments that there would not be enough resources given to the local departments. So we have created off-ramps for them to not have to hit any of these benchmarks if the resources are not provided by the state. There is a combination of some resources that I believe the state should put forward, but then there is also the local obligation that would happen, and the fact that there will be fees associated and attached. So to me, it's a state partnership with locals, but I also wanted to ensure that if no dollars came from the state to help start the implementation, pay for the database, that we're not going to force local health departments to move forward on a project that is not that's an unfunded mandate. And so I see this as being a partnership. We have made progress over the years. We have created a fund that helps low-income people go after and make low-cost loans to be able to fix their programs. I'm hopeful that we can expand that and change that so it's not just low percentage loans, but that we could also give grants to people of certain economic backgrounds so they can fix their systems. But the fact that we have systems that are already in disrepair, that are already putting waste into our rivers, into our lakes is something we should not stand for. I don't have to tell any one of you who've had beaches that have been closed, who've found E. coli in testing and in your local areas. This is all, when they go back and look at it, it is not from anything else but human waste. And so that's why, I continue to want to push this conversation forward, and hopefully at some point in time, we'll have the resources as well as the compromise to get everybody to support it. So I'll stop there, Madam Chair, and be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? This might be answered later. I think one question I have is, we've heard from some stakeholders that they're worried about the ramp-up time.
Yep.
And wonder, if you can talk a little bit more about that, and why that long ramp-up time, which, if I understand correctly, would result in a ramp-up time, or a window of maybe 13 years, even before some even high-risk septics are inspected. If you could just illuminate a bit more why that's necessary to have it be that long.
Sure. And I think when you hear from some of the health departments, I think we work with the health departments and the timing of that because of some of their concerns. When you're talking about them having, in some instances, maybe 5,000, 6,000 that they have to go through, the one, is there enough staff to be able to do the inspections? And you'll hear from the industry that we're trying to allow for third-party, private sector jobs to also do this. So it's not just on the government employees, because some counties are doing it specifically just by their own people. But just the sheer capacity. Yes, if I could have a magic wand, I would have these dates compressed and do them every 3 to 5 years. But when you're talking about 1.3 million with the amount of staff that is available, I think you can only do so many at a time. And one of the things I've asked proponents who said, hey, let's see much more quicker ways of doing this. I've asked them to also show me the other states that are doing it in a way that is different than what we're doing here. And I'm willing to look at some of those things. But as of right now, if you're going to keep this coalition together, I think you have to have the right balance between those inspection timelines and the staffing that's there. And so, but like I said, I would hope that if you're a local health department, you want to get to these as quickly as possible, because otherwise you are allowing, obviously failure of that stuff to happen in your own county, creating health issues for your residents. But again, this was sort of the compromise that came out of long negotiations during that period of time.